Now, I want to get to a story here that broke yesterday. Nothing in the mainstream media about it yet. This report is incredible, and you're going to hear more about this when I have a chance to digest this, because I've written about this extensively last March for the Post Millennial, and I reported on it on this program. And this, of course, is the scandal that we had 2 Chinese spies working in the Winnipeg microbiology lab. It's a top secret lab. We had 2 spies working there who were dedicated communists. They were sending back material and documentation to the People's Liberation Army of China. You might remember the story. CSIS warned the government about this months in advance. Nothing was done. Trudeau did nothing. The Minister of Health did nothing. The Minister of Public Safety did nothing. Finally, these 2 were told, you better go home. There's a problem here. Then suddenly we had a snap election in 2021. Why do you suppose that was? Was there a quid pro quo between China and the Liberal government? That if nothing was said and these 2 were just booted back to China, everything would be okay? And by the way, maybe you could help finance the election. And Pierre Poilievre, conservative leader, has already said that's why we had that snap election. Now, my friend Sam Cooper, who's been on this show twice to talk about Chinese election interference, was first at bat writing about this, saying CSIS warned Health Canada of insider threat from Wuhan Institute and scientists. And lethal Ebola was sent to China. Now, the question, of course, you're all wondering was, does that mean COVID might have been manufactured in Canada? I don't know, and I can't categorically make that statement or make that accusation, but it's sure looking more like that the more we know about this story. Now, this parliamentary report from the committee that was charged with looking into Chinese interference released this on November 5th, the day of the presidential election. Do you find that just a bit suspicious? Do you think perhaps they wanted to bury this report because it's potentially hugely embarrassing, catastrophically embarrassing, if this means that these guys were actually doing what potentially they could have been? And this is the question we need answered. Put my glasses on to read this one. See, the program that these 2 were here for include the 1,000 Talents program, which uses incentives such as salaries, research funding, and laboratory space to encourage Chinese researchers abroad to transmit knowledge to the People's Republic of China. You can't state it any clearer than this. And this is from the report. And if you wanted to be eligible for the 1,000 Talents program, you had to have a special passion for the socialist motherland, meaning you had to be really enthusiastic about communist China. And what do? They send you overseas, and the Trudeau government says, come on into our lab and go ahead. You can send material back to China. And that's exactly what they did. Nobody really wanted to call this espionage when this story was released in March. I called it espionage. Clearly, that's what they were doing. Spying. When you take material or documents, you remove them from the lab and you send them back to your home country, that's called spying. That's called espionage. Now, these 2 resurfaced back in China, of course. They were sent back, probably given a medal for doing such a great job. But we know the COVID vaccine, the COVID virus emerged from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. We know that. We don't know 100% that it was on purpose. Could have been an accident, but it could have been on purpose. It could have been a bioweapon produced by the Chinese to create international chaos and carnage, killing millions of people, causing economic catastrophe, leading to authoritarian governments, leading to things like the COVID mandates and lockdowns in Canada, leading to the Emergencies Act declaration by Justin Trudeau because people were sick and tired of those mandates and he pushed them down. Think of the effects of COVID. And this is all documented in this report. On 31st of March, 2021, the House of Commons Special Committee on the Canada People's Republic of China relationship adopted a motion ordering the release of unredacted PHAC documents relating to the dismissal of these two doctors. The government failed to comply with the order, and so the special committee subsequently adopted a second order for the documents. Again, the government failed to comply. The Speaker of the House was sued, if you recall, by the Trudeau government because he told the government to release the documents. You recall that? And here are these scientists, aka spies, who worked in Canada at the Winnipeg microbiology lab. Top secret place, top secret laboratory. And the question we need to know now is, what were they really up to? We need more evidence. But clearly, the 2021 snap election was a direct result of this scandal, of this cover up. The Trudeau government has been covering this up now for over 3 years. 4 years, sorry. And this is an absolute, it's not just a scandal, it goes beyond scandal. This is a disgrace. This is a national disgrace, especially if this goes as far as it might. And this is what we have to determine here, folks. How grievous was this? Total breakdown in security and intelligence. And it only was a breakdown not because, and I don't often praise the work of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, they're far too focused on social conservatives, pro-life activists, and parental rights supporters. But CSIS was doing its job here, and it reported a huge problem. So there was espionage going on in this lab, and the government should do something about it. The government ignored that advice for 7 months. During that 7 months, anything, almost literally anything, could have happened in that lab. Now, how would you feel if Canada was indicted as being responsible in any way for the production of COVID? I'm not saying it happened. I can't say that yet. But that's where this intelligence, that's where this information is headed. And it makes me extremely angry that the Trudeau government covered this up, did not want questions asked, and wanted a snap election right after this occurred. Was there a quid pro quo? I've asked that in the past. I'll ask it again. Was there? Did the government get something back from China for allowing these two to go quietly back, for saying absolutely nothing about what happened here? And if absolutely nothing meant a cover up about the production of the pandemic, that is incredible. And that's what we need to know right now, folks. That's what we need to get, I hate to say it, to the bottom of. I wrote this story for the Post Millennial way back in March here because Poilievre at the time was putting two and two together and saying, hold it. Why did we have a snap election right after this? right after these two are suddenly sent back to China. And we know that information was being sent back to the People's Liberation Army. Why did we suddenly have an election? Now, Poilievre hasn't made the accusation that there was a quid pro quo. But I think he should at least ask the question of whether there was a link between these two and whether or not the Liberal government received assistance from China. Because we know Chinese election interference has included the support of Liberal MPs in the Greater Toronto area. We know that. We know that's why we had the Hogue inquiry, which is really, I don't think is going to ever come to any logical conclusion. But that's why we had the Hogue inquiry. Not because we were worried about India, but because we know that China was helping Justin Trudeau. That's why Justin Trudeau doesn't want to talk about this issue at all. So we're going to be hearing more about this in the next few days. And can't wait to have Kyle Kemper on the show. We'll be talking about what the election of Donald Trump means for Canada. Yes, and for the U.S., but also what it means for freedom around the world, for freedom of speech, for perhaps the end of more COVID mandates or more pandemic mandates or more infringement upon our basic right to decide what we do with our lives. And damn it, the Conservative Party of Canada had better stand up and take notice of what happened this week in the United States. It's good news for Canada. You're going to see the mainstream media continue to talk about this being a catastrophe, about this being devastating for Canada. It's going to mean horrible consequences. But the mainstream media is on its last legs. It probably won't be around, as I said, and even a minimized form of what it is today, because people no longer watch it, people no longer read it, people no longer believe it, people no longer trust it because it spews lies and projects that on everybody else. They are the kings of misinformation, but yet they accuse everybody else of spreading misinformation and disinformation, just like Justin Trudeau. The times, they are changing, folks. And with Donald Trump in the White House, we might have a chance for peace. We might have a chance not to have a nuclear war, to have a third world war, which was, I think, a very real possibility had Donald Trump lost this election. We just have to keep an eye on the deep state right now in terms of how they are going to move against President-elect Trump before he becomes president on January 20th. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, folks. Don't listen to Justin Trudeau. We need this kind of attitude in Canada right now because, let me tell you, Justin Trudeau will fight tooth and nail to stay as leader of the Liberal Party and as Prime Minister of Canada, and he will use every trick in the Liberal handbook to do that. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to have perseverance to fight this battle to the end. As I've been saying since this station went on the air, we need to resolve to resist. And we need to fight for our free speech and our democratic rights to say what we believe, to speak, as John Diefenbaker said. And don't forget that t-shirt that's available out there in the store. I speak as a free Canadian, free to speak, free to believe in what I choose. And Justin Trudeau is not going to interfere with that. Thanks for being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right Resistance, and we'll see you again soon. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist